Keep your mics muted at all times. Unless you have a question, and you're more than welcome to either raise your hand or just interrupt if it's at the appropriate time and ask your question. I would like to welcome our presenter this morning, Ellen Davis. She's a fifth-year special education teacher leader in New Hanover County Schools. She's taught in both the inclusion and self-contained special ed settings, and one of her greatest passions in education is working with and developing beginning teachers. So let's welcome Ellen Davis.
Hey guys, good morning. Thank you for having me this morning as we're talking about kind of evolving and building a plane as we're flying it, as we're entering into this world of virtual learning for our children with special needs. We're now, I guess, a good 3 months into this, and it's looking like more legislation is going to come down the pipeline just about how we're going to regulate education as we move into what we don't know will be our future. So what I've come together with is a presentation to kind of address some of the questions that I've met with my team about, and some of the questions that teachers feel like they need a little bit more support on. And a lot of it really is in how to engage our children and how to meet them where they are, because we know when we work with children with special needs, there's a lot of factors that contribute to their learning and how they access their education. And when you think special education, I know a lot of people think, that hands-on learning. And it's really hard to do hands-on learning when you're sitting behind a computer screen. So I've kind of brainstormed some different ideas and different ways to just help special education teachers out throughout this time of digital learning. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I've just posted a question to a faster poll. I think I shared the link with you guys in the chat, but if you wouldn't mind popping this this site into your URL, and let's just kind of see where everyone's at. And the question being, how well have your students engaged during digital learning? And if it's not working, please let me know. And I can go back and share that poll again. And like I said, the URL is posted in the chat, so I'm just going to check over here and see if we've had any action on our poll. All right, so let's see if we can expand this. So it's looking like not so much activity. And speaking from my experience, like Kelly had said, I'm a teacher in New Hanover County Schools, and we have a very diverse demographic of students. We have students whose families can supply them with iPads, Chromebooks, anything they might need. And then we have the opposite, where students have limited access to technology and have parents whose phones are on monthly minutes, and sometimes you can't reach them. And that's just a really, really frustrating thing as a special education teacher, because we care about our kids and we know that we are their safe haven. And so not being able to engage with them is very, very frustrating. But one of the things I like to kind of look at, and that's going to lead us into our next slide, is compliance during the pandemic and IDA. What IDA wasn't built for a pandemic. And I think when we started on this journey back in March, that was one of my biggest fears as a special education teacher. I worry about meeting my children's minutes. I worry about their learning. I worry about the window of opportunity. And then that's just the teacher side of it. The other piece is that compliance piece of, oh my goodness, we have IEP meetings to run. We have initials to, meet on, and children that need to be assessed during this process. And how in the world is this going to happen? And back in March, like I said, the Center for Exceptional Children came out with this kind of 4 priorities for special education. And, the first one being focus on safety and focus on the health of your students, staff members, and community. And that's a big one, and not letting this kind of consume you as a teacher, because you're a human before you're a teacher, and kind of holding true to that piece that sometimes you have to take a break for yourself. And you'll see that in this presentation that was designed, a reminder for teachers to just take a moment for themselves, but do the best you can as well. Provide FAPE, deliver services to as many students as you reasonably can in the best way you know. I think a lot of school districts are working on different requirements for special education teachers during this time and how that they're going to meet the needs of their children. For my district, we had to create temporary learning plans, and those kind of structured how we would implement instruction for our kids. But I know other districts have come out with some different things. I'm going to talk specifically today about the structures that my county specifically has implemented, but I know different counties have done different things. But like I said, compliance during a pandemic, IDA wasn't built for this. There is nowhere in that piece of legislation that it says during a pandemic, you will meet this amount of minutes. So you just kind of have to do the best you can with what you have. So, like I said, I've kind of designed a little strategy to help teachers during this. And I've put it down to a step-by-step process. The first being take a deep breath. You know, it's come down from the top. IDEA was not designed for this. There's only so much we can do. And when information's trickling down, know that the people that you are working with and working for are getting it out to you in the most timely manner that they see fit, trying not to overwhelm you at the same time. So typically, when information's coming down the pipeline, you're getting it as quick as the people who are receiving these messages are getting it as well. And the next piece being relationships. You're a teacher, like you love children, and those children miss you and they want to hear from you. And so there's different ways that you can connect with your kids and use this truly as an opportunity. I know as special education teachers, or as a special education teacher, I work with children that are impacted by behavior. And a lot of times I'm calling a parent when we're in a typical school setting, letting them know that, Johnny's had an accident today and we need you to come up to the school. And so sometimes when they see my number pop up on the phone, they're like, oh my goodness, she's calling again. So using this as an opportunity to build relationships with families and kind of reaching out to them and letting them know that you're there for them. And I've got a couple tools that I'll share with you in the presentation about that. And then also realizing you're a special ed teacher, you're a superhero. You, without even realizing it, change instruction every day to meet your children where they are. I can't tell you how many times, and I know that you all have probably done the same thing. You're sitting in a classroom and you're talking to a general ed teacher and they're presenting you with information and they're saying, this is what I want them to be able to do. And they haven't had the opportunity to break it down and modify the assignment. And without manipulatives and without a textbook, you're already using your brain to kind of shift the instruction and to shift the activity to meet the child where they are. So you do have the tools in your toolbox. We've added another layer to the cake of how we're going to deliver this instruction to our kids. And the last piece of advice I'm providing for you guys today is making lists. And I've created 2 different guiding documents to kind of help you with what's most important, one being compliance and the second being communication, because I don't know for a fact, but I do know that a lot of school districts are looking at who we've been able to reach and who we've been able to help during this time, and then what children we have not been able to reach. So having lists and having documentation of all of that will be key during this transitional stage. So jumping right in. So our take a deep breath section. Will be the first one to admit to anyone, I don't like to stop. When I get moving, there is no stopping for me. When somebody tells me to take a deep breath or give yourself a minute, I don't want to do that. I just want to solve a problem. But right now, there's so many problems out there in the world that we really do have to take a deep breath, because if we don't, we're going to become overwhelmed and then we're not going to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. So I'm going to ask that everyone take a moment this morning, take 3 little minutes and take a deep breath. And that's what we're getting ready to do right now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and ask everyone to participate in mindful breathing.
Close your eyes and rest your hands on your knees. Bring your attention to the touch of your body on your seat. Feel the weight of your body on your chair or cushion. Make sure that your back is straight and that you're comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. While you're breathing deeply, relax your shoulders, your stomach muscles, the muscles in your face, your hands, and your legs. Let go of all the tightness in your body. Now bring your attention back to your breath. Notice what it feels like as it enters through your nose, goes down through your throat, filling your lungs, and back out through your nose. Notice your stomach and chest rise and fall each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. And just allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now bring your attention to the feeling of your breath in your nose. Feel your breath as it comes in and goes out. Just focus on this sensation, paying attention to each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. As you inhale, maybe your breath feels cool. And as you exhale, maybe it feels a little warmer. When your mind wanders, or if you become distracted, just notice what's going on in your head, and then gently bring your attention back to your breath, going in and out. Focus on the feeling of your breath and allow thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background. Now gently bring your attention back to the touch of your body on your seat and open your eyes.
All right. So, like I said, it's really hard as a teacher to stop and give yourself a moment. But while we're working in digital learning and trying to learn new platforms and trying to learn new ways to implement instruction, it is super, super overwhelming. But it's also really important to remember that you are a person too and that you deserve a moment to yourself to take a break. So, I put that in there as just a quick 3-minute exercise to help teachers take a deep breath. Now, jumping right in, this is really my favorite part, and I think this has been an incredible opportunity for our teachers, is truly the relationship building. You look at a pandemic, you think of all the horrible, horrible things that are happening in our world right now, but there's also some opportunities here that we can take advantage of and really work with our students. I've worked off of Google Classroom throughout this entire digital learning process. And so I would traditionally have a morning meeting with my students and kind of talk about expectations, talk about what's going to happen in our classroom during the day. And that's not obviously something we can do in a face-to-face setting, but we can still provide that connection with our kids right now. So what I've done is on my Google Classroom, every morning I have a morning meeting with my kids, and I post a video of myself and I provide them a quote of the day. I might do a read aloud, or I might take them on a tour of the outside. Kids love, love, love seeing what's going on in your world as a teacher. So I've shown them my garden. I've included my dog in these presentations, but just an opportunity for them to see me, to hear my voice, to hear something familiar during this time when they have to be away from their friends. I know some school systems have allowed Zoom meetings to occur within classes, and I think that's an awesome, awesome thing to do. I know for a lot of my children, we work with a culture and a community that isn't so big on Zoom, and we've had a hard time getting our families to accept technology. They don't traditionally want to use email, and they don't want they don't like the idea of video cameras in their home. So this is a way for me to be able to at least show the kids myself and let them see my face and hear my voice during this time of digital learning. So like I said, every morning on my Google Classroom, I present a morning message and I do a read aloud and I provide some kind of social emotional learning check-in for my kids. And I'm going to show you guys my Google Classroom here in a little bit, but I just wanted to throw that in as a plug. Even on Google Classroom, I'm providing that morning meeting opportunity. So somebody said we're in the business of giving grace. And I think a lot of times when we're, checking assignments and checking to see what kids have and have not done, we're automatically going, oh my goodness, it took me so much time to upload that piece of information. And then there's nothing from the child. Well, we don't always know the circumstance and we don't always know what's going on at home, but some things we can do to try to bridge that gap and to try to get some engagement from our kids. I've written personalized notes home using, stationery from my house. I've taken my dog's paw print and let him, sign some of these letters I've written to my kids, and they love it. They absolutely love getting a letter from Miss Davis. And typically, when I write that personalized letter, then I'm going to do a phone call to check in, and I ask the parents, hey, can I talk to so and so? And then I'll ask them, did you get my letter? And they're super, super excited to tell me that they got something in the mail from their teacher that wasn't, a negative note home, that wasn't a letter talking about behavior, just something that was really neat from the teacher. And then that's an opportunity for me, once I've got them on the phone, to say, hey, have you had an opportunity to check in on Google Classroom? Have you had an opportunity to look at some of the things that I've posted? And a lot of times, once you've bridged that gap and had that conversation and the parent sees that you're coming from the perspective of you care versus you're trying to get assignments posted, they tend to buy in a little bit more. And like I said, I'm making the phone calls and I'm writing the notes. I've also been emailing parents just to say thank you and I appreciate your efforts. And that's gone a long way, because I know some of the teachers that I work with, we talk about the conversations we're having with parents. And a lot of times parents are using us as kind of, we're catching it all. They're frustrated. They're telling us all the struggles that they're having within the home, be it, the work challenges, trying to get kids to connect, trying to get kids to do so many things. And then they're also trying to work. And it is challenging. And I totally get it. So letting parents know you hear them and letting them know that you appreciate what they're doing, it goes a long, long way. And I've had a lot of positive feedback from parents just saying thank you. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you for not holding this over our head and thinking we're terrible parents. No, I get it. It's a lot. A lot of families have more than one child in different grade levels, and they have a child with special needs who's in the 4th grade, whose special ed teacher has a platform, and then the gen ed teacher has a platform. And oh my gosh, this is so, so much. But if I'm sending an email saying, hey, I get it. It's super challenging right now. Do the best you can. I'm going to make a phone call and I'm going to check in with your child. Let's work together to make this happen, because I know it's a lot on you. And then another cool thing that my district has started doing is, being special education teachers in self-contained settings, sometimes you have a paraprofessional and you're saying, what in the world am I going to do with my para? My para can't really run my IEP meetings for me if you're doing meetings via Zoom. There's a lot of things they can't do, and be at the level of a relationship that you have with your para. I have a great relationship with my para. I've trained my para. So she knows exactly what I want my children to be working on each part of the day. And I can call her up and say, hey, can you create this and this for me? And I know it's going to be great. But I also know that we've worked to have that kind of relationship, and not everybody has that. So one thing you can do, and that I would highly encourage, is Zoom allows this feature, and there's some other features on different web-based programs where you could have paraprofessionals do read alouds. And if you're a self-contained teacher, read alouds can happen and you can embed them into any kind of instruction. You can use them for math, you can use them for reading, you can use them for social emotional learning. The Giving Tree read aloud can be used so many different things, and kids like hearing the voices. They like hearing their principal on the phone or on a video reading them a story. They love hearing the nurse. That was a big one. And I had a lot of positive feedback when we asked our school nurse to do a read aloud for us. And I just posted it to my Google Classroom. And the kids thought that was the coolest thing. And I had a couple kids when I did personal phone calls to check in say, Nurse Emma was reading us a story. So they think it's really cool. And it's, again, another opportunity for you to connect with your kids. So these are just 4 things I've done to connect with my children on top of Google Classroom. And I would highly recommend them. And I've had a lot of positive feedback with it. But also, just again, if you can't do these things, just make a phone call. And yeah, I know it takes a lot of time. That's what I spend my Thursdays doing. I make family phone calls. But knowing that this is kind of giving you the opportunity to build relationships with your families, because when we go back, think about the transitional stage your children are going to be in. I mean, they've been at home for 6 and 7 months, and home looks different than school, and there's different expectations at home than at school. So knowing that there's probably going to be some rifts and there's going to be some learning curves, and you're going to need the support of families, it's going to be really hard to get that support if it's not already established, because parents may, and I'm not saying they will, but they may have that mentality of, oh my goodness, I'm finally, they're at school again. I'm getting time to work, and I want it to be isolated time of myself to work. So they may not be in the business of wanting to answer every single phone call you make, but if you've already established that relationship, they're more than likely going to be supportive because they know that you've been there for them throughout this period of digital learning. So like I said, these are just 4 things I've done and I've found really positive, or I've had really positive feedback from them. So, teacher superheroes here. The next thing I think that's really, really important, and some districts are mandating certain platforms for you to utilize, and some are leaving it up to the teacher themselves. But 3 platforms I really like and my teams have used are Google Classroom. And it's awesome because it's interactive. You can kind of create everything within Google Classroom using Google Docs, Google Forms, slides, and it's in a one-stop shop. And a lot of times schools already have Gmail accounts set up for kids. So it's just, I really like it because it's universal, and teachers typically have access to everything that a student would upload anyway, because they're kind of under your subcategory. So if they're having a hard time submitting it, you can typically find the assignment that they're trying to submit. But I also would say this is really for more grades 3 to 5, and then your secondary children as well. Seesaw, I think this is more of a K-2 program, and it's asking a lot of parents. So think about the audience when you're delivering instruction. You're really teaching to the parent and having the parent deliver the instruction. Again, nothing wrong with that. I just personally like the Google Classroom setting. And then Class Dojo, I think it's great. I think a lot of general education teachers use it to have communication with parents throughout the day. And it also provides that positive reinforcement, giving points, and the kids have the avatars and they love that. And it does have some great SEL components that I know a lot of self-contained teachers are using. So these are just 3 different platforms that I think a lot of people like and a lot of people have used to help their students. And I'm going to right now open my Google Classroom. So if you'll just bear with me for 1 second so you guys can see mine. All right. So on my Google Classroom, I have some different kind of resources. So a lot of families, from the weekly check-ins I was doing, I was getting feedback saying there's just so much on Google Classroom. It's so overwhelming, and we don't want the kids to not know what to do. So what I decided to do was subdivide it into different categories. And each week I would post assignments for that category. So the last week we did a review of skills, and I provided at-home summer reading resources. And whenever I post an assignment, I also provide voice over instructions for that assignment, because a lot of our children do have that read aloud as an accommodation. So I'm still providing read aloud. It's just looking a little bit different. So I have read aloud instructions for all my assignments. And I went ahead, since this was the last week we provided instruction, I created access for all my kids to have all of this over the summer in case the parents wanted to work on skills. But like I said, each week I categorized it and uploaded information. And then, like I said, I have my morning messages and my morning meetings where I provided a video and we talk about different challenges. And sometimes I ask the kids to post comments. And like I said, not every kid's going to do this, but for the ones that you're able to get through this platform, it's awesome. And then I have my math resources. And what I also did when I created my Google Classroom was I made a video and a tutorial of how to access Google Classroom. And I had my Spanish speaking liaison. We met over Zoom and she did a Spanish video for our Spanish families so that it was accessible to all students, because a lot of times our children speak English, but their parents don't speak English. And so there's that gap and the parents are feeling like, they're not able to know what exactly their child needs to do. So I think that was another positive thing when working with a platform, creating a tutorial and a how-to so that all families have access to each platform and they know what the expectation is. But I will go back and say that whenever I make phone calls, sometimes I do have to utilize my liaison to be able to speak to my Spanish families, because I want to check in with the kids. But I also, again, want to be able to check in with the parents and see, do they have any questions or do they have anything that they need help with? Because I don't speak Spanish, but I have somebody who does and who can help me be able to go back and forth with families. And I think that's really, really important. So, like I said, pick a platform. If your district has not gone ahead and told you what kind of platform you need to be looking at for next school year, or if they didn't tell you in the spring, go ahead and look at these 3 different ones. There's some awesome trainings through DPI over the summer that'll kind of take you through these 3 platforms and kind of help you problem solve and see what needs to be met on these 3 platforms. So the next piece I wanted to look at, and the next tool that I really, really like, I'm a list person. I think as special education teachers, I don't think you'd walk into many special ed teacher classrooms and not see to-do lists and task analysis and, step-by-step guides. So why would it be any different for our teachers? And 2 survival tools that I've created for myself during digital learning have been a communication log and a compliance sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and show you my communication log. So what I've done is I have my student names, their phone numbers, their email, case manager, the gen ed teacher, and then did we make contact, and then the level of services. And I try to update I obviously can't show you my personal, but this is a sample of what it would look like. And I do update it regularly, and I put in the dates that we've made contact for each student. And I think it's important, like I said, because when we go back and we're looking at compensatory ed or we're looking at ESY, once we're back in school and kids are starting to learn again, it's going to be important to look at, data and did this kid access their education during March to June of the 2020 school year. And, it might not be the sole deciding factor, but I think it's going to contribute to decisions that are going to be made around ESY and compensatory ed. And we don't exactly have clear-cut instructions on that right now. I think that's something that DPI and the feds are still trying to work on together. But I know for myself that I like to be prepared, and I think this is an awesome way to be prepared. And I have made this accessible for you guys so you have access to this through the PowerPoint. And then another piece I like is my compliance checklist. I am the lead teacher in my region, so I run all the compliance checklists through ECAT. I submit everything when that needs to be submitted, and I'm also in charge of doing our initial intake meetings. And probably like you guys, we have met on a lot of kids back in February and January, and their initial placement meetings were supposed to occur in March and April. Well, our site didn't get to finish her evaluation, and we want to evaluate these children and do everything to fidelity. So obviously we've got a lot of open evals, and when you log in ECATS, if you're like me, you don't like to see the yellow triangle, let alone a red one. So it is a little bit, for me, it produces a lot of anxiety to see the things, but it helps to know where you are at within that process. So what my school psychologist and I did is we created this document, and for annuals, my district was able to meet. I don't know about other districts, but my district allowed us to go ahead and conduct annual reviews via Zoom if the parent was willing. So for my own team, that really wasn't a big issue, but the big issue was the results of formal evaluation meetings. So what we did is my team put in the student name, the date that we were supposed to, or the date that the initial eval was due, and then the date that we scheduled our meeting. And then obviously we were not able to reschedule it. So my school psychologist and I contacted families, kind of let them know where we were at in the process and let them know that once we were able to return to the table, we would be contacting them. And once she was able to finish evaluations, and this was just kind of nice to have, because we all know that with them working in the school district, that some families kind of want answers right now, and they sometimes forget that there's a lot of things that have to happen to provide you an answer. And so this is just a nice tool to have when my principal is calling me and saying, hey, this family has called and they're really curious about an evaluation. Well, I can pull up my spreadsheet, or I've already shared it with my admin and let them know, well, we opened the eval on this date. This is the things that we have completed, and these are the things that we need to finish before we can have a formal meeting. And I think this is just a nice tool to have to kind of let you know where you're at. And I, again, gave you guys editing rights to this to kind of help you and use this as a tool for your teams. And then, so my district created temporary learning plans, and I'm not sure what other districts did, but like I said earlier, a temporary learning plan was essentially an agreed upon time and an agreed upon learning platform for students with disabilities. So I had families that would say, you can call once a week, and it can be a 30-minute phone call, and the kids will access your Google Classroom, and you can do the call, and that will be how they access their specially designed instruction. But I also had families say, you know what, this is a lot. I can't promise you that they're going to access Google Classroom, but if you want to call and check in, that would be great too. And it wasn't a yes or no, like that's not going to work. It was, okay, that's what we're going to do. So we kind of met them where they were. And what we had to do for my district was we had to upload our temporary learning plans and submit them to central office so that they could have documentation of what we were doing for each kid. And I kind of want to open that up because I see that we have a couple people in our group, but it's not too overwhelming. What are you guys having to do in your districts for learning right now? Did you guys have to create temporary learning plans? Did you kind of make phone calls? What was the general consensus across your districts? So feel free to, you can either speak out on that or pop it up in the chat. It varied. Phone calls. So it looks like it varied, and a lot of people had to make phone calls. And I think that was kind of the general consensus too. Yeah, I was just reading over some of you guys' comments. So it does sound like phone calls, the video piece. And I think that's, I don't have all the answers and I would never claim to, but as a special ed teacher, I think it's, we know the scenarios that our children are facing. We know the home lives because we've talked to the families. And sometimes it's just really hard to deliver that message and to be the middleman when you've got somebody over your head saying, I think it'd be great if your students engaged in a Zoom call, and all the contributing factors that would make that really, really challenging. And so I'm with you. We kind of steered clear of the Zoom route for our kids just because we knew that there were so many factors contributing to getting our babies onto Zoom. So yeah, I tried to kind of steer clear of the Zoom route as well, but I think the phone calls were key, and I think documenting those phone calls will be huge. And I don't know what it's going to look like when it comes down from DPI and exactly what they're going to be looking for, but I know that I would it's a good thing to have everything pre-documented instead of having to go back and say, well, on this date, I called this parent and this is what we talked about. So I think documentation of all these things that you guys are doing is going to be huge. And I know that it is frustrating because right now, there is not a universal message. And I think our state worked really hard to implement ECATS because that's a universal platform that we were all using. And it was great to have IEPs in one form, and our state was hopping on the bandwagon with that. And then, we got hit with the pandemic. So, teachers were trying to learn a new platform universally across the state, but then now we're up in the air about what we're going to do to provide instruction further on. But I do know that my district has gone ahead and made the decision that from third grade on, our kids will use Google Classroom, and K2 would use Seesaw. And then if they wanted to use Dojo, they would be able to do that for communication. So I think decisions are starting to be made about how we're going to deliver instruction. I just think it's taking a little bit of time. And, I don't want to call us the guinea pigs by any means, but from March until now, there were a lot of things that are problems that had to be solved, because I know the first time I uploaded everything to Google Classroom, it wasn't like I was uploading it at school where I could teach my kids and say, and this is your password, and this is how you log in, and this is how you access this assignment. There was really no opportunity for that direct instruction piece. And after 5 phone calls from parents saying, hey, we are really having a hard time with this, I immediately went back to the drawing board, and that's when I made a tutorial video for both my Spanish and English speaking families, so they would at least understand how to access Google Classroom. But that doesn't, negate the fact that there were some kids who were not able to access anything at all because of lack of access to technology. And for those, we made packets and wrote letters and kind of did the best we could to meet those learners where they were. And I know that, we are all superheroes, and I never want a teacher to forget that, because we all have powers and we all have the ability to make our kids feel amazing and to feel loved. And right now, giving grace and just reaching out and focusing on those relationships is huge. And all the other stuff, I feel like utilizing these tools and just being patient, waiting to hear from your districts as to what you're going to have to do is going to be key. But use this time right now to build those relationships and to let the families know you're there for them. You're going to do the best you can to help them as they navigate this digital world, because this is new for everybody. I definitely know it's new for me. So that's really all I have for you guys. I did share my contact information in case you guys had any questions or wanted access to any of my documents. And I know we're finishing up a little bit early, but I did want to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions if you had any.
So Ellen, this is Kelly Ficklin again, and I just wanted to tell you that one of the things you said just really touched my heart. And so the quote you had towards the beginning of your presentation, when you said, we're in the business of giving grace, I think that's so important and so beautiful. And it really ties in with the speaker who began our program today. And if our students don't feel loved, valued, and respected, then the rest of it is kind of, they don't buy in. So I just think that was a really, really beautiful quote that you shared.
Yeah. Our superintendent shared that with us, and it really stuck with me, because for so long we think about, did they get an A? Did they get a B? Or as special education teachers, we're like, okay, come on, let's do what we can. We got to get them to pass. But it really makes you scale back and think about people and the impact we're leaving upon them, and definitely, being gracious to these families, because we don't know everything that's happening behind closed doors, and we don't know, all the challenges that these families are facing. Because I've talked to a couple of families and they've got 5 kids and they have one piece of technology for 5 children. So I can't imagine how cumbersome that is to be able to get all those kids to access everything on top of trying to have a job. So just giving grace.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Another thing I wanted to ask you is, could you please share how you involved the paraprofessionals in getting them to come to your class and read?
Yes. So I sent out a blanketed email kind of at the beginning of this, knowing that my paras needed to get hours. So I just sent out an email and I said, hey guys, it's really important that the kids get to see you, because sometimes my kids talk to solely my paraprofessional, doing check-ins and check-outs, and you are a really important part of their education. So I need you. Send out that blanketed email, and then I made a tutorial talking them through how to make a video. And then I just gave them a list of books and said, hey, it would be awesome if you would be willing to do read alouds for these, and then just send me the video and I'll upload it to Google Classroom. And for the teachers that did not have those books at home, I was just running them to their houses, obviously cleaned and in Ziploc bags and with the gloves and all that good stuff, but just providing them the books to do the read alouds with.
Perfect. And I wanted to thank you for sharing your documents, your tables that you use with our beginning teachers.
Of course.
So does anyone else have any questions for Ellen?
I do. Ellen, thank you. This is Vanita. I think all of your documents probably speak to how well organized you are also. What do you see, how do you see the beginning of your year changing in terms of, in the beginning, we go into the year and we know that all the things that we have to do to set up physically for our rooms, but also like set up for kids first day, first week, first month.
Yeah.
How do you think your lens has changed about getting ready for the beginning of the year?
Well, like you said, there's so much that goes into starting the beginning of the year, and you think about all the schedules you create, and you think about desk placement, and you think about reviewing BIPs and those meetings you have to have with general ed teachers, talking to them about your kids. I think that, there's going to have to be a lot of patience given, and I think there's going to have to be a lot of organization. And I was speaking to my admin about this yesterday. I think there's going to have to be a lot of front loading for parents. And once we kind of have guidelines around what school is going to look like, we're going to need to inform our parents and provide them trainings on how to run some of these things that we're going to be asking them to do, because I think there's nothing worse for a parent than being asked to do something and knowing that, you are a part of your child's learning, and now you're a part of, not that parents weren't responsible before, but now they've got they're bigger stakeholders in this because they're delivering instruction too. And so they want to do it to fidelity. So definitely front loading and providing parents videos and learning opportunities to learn how to help their children. It's going to be big on this as we begin the new school year.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have a question?
And just before we get off, this is Vanita again. I do not, I don't see the access to the documents in the chat. I miss it.
I can share them again with you.
Vanita, those documents will all be shared by Dr. Granger in the website for this as well. Yeah,
Okay.
she'll have everything there from every presentation, including the recordings of all presentations.
Okay, save your.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ellen, we want to thank you so much, and just some housekeeping for everyone. The next session will begin at 10:30, so I will have to close out this chat room completely, and then at 10:25ish, you guys will go ahead and sign into your second option for your sessions. And once again, this has been recorded, so you will have access to this session. Thank you so much, Ellen, for sharing some wonderful information.
Thank you.